Okie dokes. Hello, everyone. Okay, so I might not be able to see all of my notes, so I'm just going to have to try and wing this a little bit, I think, because I'm not sure why it's not working. So welcome to my session, which is entitled, as Sophie has said, Don't Touch My Hair, and it's around microaggression and culture in the workplace. So what are microaggressions? I've put three things that have come up in my experience, or three things that people have said to me that I would consider as microaggressions, just as an example. So the first one is, I have been asked when I've gone to work, oh, you're going to another wedding or funeral, if I've asked for time off or something like that. And then it's, oh, you've got a lot of family, or you know a lot of people, or how much family have you got? It's those types of questions. I've had occasions where I've brought something into work and I'll say to a colleague, do you want to try this? And it's, oh, no, thanks. I know that you guys like your spicy food, or you use too much spice for me, or something along those lines. And then the third one that I've put here is, it's just a bit of water. Stop worrying about your hair all the time. It will dry. Those are kind of some of the microaggressions that I have experienced in the workplace. So let's look at what microaggression is. So looking at the Wikipedia, or the dictionary definition, it's a statement, an action, or an incident that's regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group, such as a racial or ethnic minority. Doesn't just apply to racial or ethnic minorities. There are also plenty of microaggressions against women, people from the LGBT community, people with disabilities. And so it's not just against, Black and ethnic minority people. So what's culture then? So culture is the way of life, especially the general customs and beliefs of a particular group of people at a particular time. So culture is not, again, just about Black ethnic minority people, people that come from diverse or marginalized backgrounds. Everybody has a culture. So for example, it may be that you religiously put England football flag in your window when the Euros are on, or the World Cup is on, or you use the same recipe that's been passed down for generations for turkey at Christmas, or you may have go for a walk every morning, and that's part of your culture. It's basically about a way of life. And so that's why when we mix the kind of cultural biases or misunderstanding with the microaggressive behavior, that it can come across as if it's almost a personal attack on somebody. Sophie, I'm going to try and switch to my other screen again and see, because I don't want to miss anything out. And I did put down quite a lot of kind of things that I wanted to get out of this session. So I'm not quite sure what's showing, but if my notes are showing, please just ignore them, is what I would have to say. Sophie, can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm assuming I'm showing the wrong screen, but I don't know how to change it, and I don't really want to miss anything that I'm saying. So if somebody subliminally criticized or went against something that was in your cultural, within your culture, and I've given obviously some examples of what different cultural things are with the football, etc. How would you feel if that was done to you? So the reasons that people with those sorts of culture, what we'd say general English or British culture, why they don't experience microaggressions is because the majority of us are immersed in those cultural things. I was born and I grew up in West London, in Hammersmith. And so I understand, and I've been immersed in the country's love for football, the country's love for things like, our beautiful English countryside, and going for holidays and things in those places. So although it might not be part of my culture, I might not watch football, I might not do any of those things, I have embraced those things and understand it. And so I probably wouldn't exhibit much microaggressive behavior in terms of those cultural norms. I think what's happened over the last 18 months in terms of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement and the things that's been happening even this month with LGBTQ month is people have much more of a willingness and a want to understand others' diversity and to immerse themselves in those in that diversity. And there's a general wish to include belonging and other cultures and inclusivity within the workplace and also within wider society, which I think is great news. So I'm going to go back to my slides. I'm really sorry about this. So if you're wondering who this is and what she's doing, this is a lady called Mina Fombo, and she's a Bristolian. And she did a social experiment and study called the Don't Touch My Hair study. And basically what she did was, one of the parts of this study was she went around and did a social experiment. She went into public places and went to go and touch people's hair and kind of asked them how they felt after the fact, you know, in terms of someone just randomly, a stranger coming up and touching your hair. And generally, most people, which you would expect, felt that it was weird, it was intrusive, it was like, you know, why would you do something like just go up to somebody and touch their hair? And I think that, you know, what she was trying to demonstrate, amongst other things, was that people think it's okay because their intentions, or they feel that their intentions are not against the person, or they're not trying to be offensive, that it's okay to kind of do these things. So this was Mina's experiment that she did, and basically really trying to raise awareness around things that she had experienced as a child. Now, I change my hair very often, at least once a month, if not more often than that sometimes. And I've put here some of the common questions that I get asked when I go into the office on a morning and I've changed my hair. I didn't recognize you. Changed your hair again. Wish I could change mine as often. Now, with that comment, it's kind of a mixed thing. So first of all, it's not, I love compliments. A lot of us love compliments. So please don't stop giving me compliments. If you see something, if I've changed my hair, if I've done something and you like it, please tell me that you like it. But what I think is the difference is the changed your hair again question. Is that warranted? It made me feel as if I was under a microscope and I was being studied, and people were, you know, looking at how often I change my hair. And is there a problem with me changing my hair? You know, you start to kind of second guess and almost want to shrink into the background a little bit. But the compliment, you know, is fine. The acknowledgement is fine, but it's kind of look at how and what it is that you're saying to the person with that comment. Then I get the, how long did that take? I bet it was hours. Now, that question came because on one occasion, I had gone into the office and I'd had braids done, and they were long braids and they were quite thin, small braids. And, you know, I was asked, how long did that take? And I said, it took me 7 hours. And since that day, whenever I change my hair, oh, that must have taken a really long time, and that must have, you know, and it's this assumption about my hair. Well, actually, I more often than not, I'm not at the moment, but I more often than not wear wigs. And actually it takes me 3.5 seconds to change my hair on that occasion. So, and then third one I've put here is, it looks lovely, but how did they get it like that? Can I have a feel? And normally with the can I have a feel comes the immediate, I just look round and one of my strands of hair is twiddling in somebody's fingers. So I'm sure that you could appreciate with these things why somebody may feel uncomfortable, or again, as if they're being studied or, you know, looked at, or as if we're an anomaly. And as much as diversity and recognizing my diversity is something that, you know, I embrace and would want somebody to do, I don't want to be looked at as if I'm something strange. And I think that that is kind of the basis of where some of these comments that are being made could come from. Okay, to the next slide. So with Mina, she set up, or she did this social experiment, and she did a TED talk. And in her TED talk, she had an exercise that she did. And I would do this exercise with you all, apart from the fact that we're all in little boxes in our homes. And what she did was she played a Mina Says. And, you know, the normal kind of Simon Says things: touch your head, touch your nose, you know, clap your hand. Couldn't get people standing on one leg and hopping because they were sitting down. But, you know, those same things. And then the next thing that she said was, now reach forward and touch the person in front of you, your chair's hair. And it was mostly a Caucasian, white dominated crowd. And they kind of fell into different camps. But the overwhelming feeling was that most people didn't actually want to be touched, first of all, and they didn't want to do the touching. And I found that strange. It wasn't something that she touched on in the talk, but I found that really interesting, because sometimes when you are familiar with people in the workplace, there is a kind of, and there is a saying, you know, over familiarity breeds contempt. And you feel as if, because you have got a kind of relationship with them, that it's okay to do that. But if it was a complete and utter stranger, or you perceived them as a complete and utter stranger, people felt much more uncomfortable doing things like reaching forward and touching someone's hair. So, and I thought that that was quite an interesting concept, because it's not something that people, normally touching people is not something that people would want to or like to do. And you do get the argument where others would say, well, for example, pregnant ladies, they are touched a lot of the time. They get unwanted touching, people coming up and grabbing their bellies. And I've got 4 daughters, and that has happened to me every single time. I even had people on the tube reaching over and touching my stomach. And but the thing is, in 9 months' time, I won't have that issue anymore. Whereas even I think if I was to shave my hair off, people would still try to touch my scalp. So, you know, I think that there is a difference with that. And it's something that we live with. Our hair, our skin color, our, you know, our physical abilities or disabilities, they're all, and I don't like that word disabilities, but I haven't found a better word to use as yet. If somebody has a better word to use, I'm really happy to hear them. You know, it doesn't matter what those things are. They're part of us, and so they don't go away. They're not temporary. And I've had, you know, colleagues say, you know, I'm happy for you to touch my hair, and I'm like, again, it's not, I'm not trying to exchange or trade hair touching favors with you. It's uncomfortable for me. And, you know, whether you're happy with it, it's about that understanding. I'm going to switch back to my notes again. I'm hoping that this will be like a nice little game. So just checking that I have said everything that I want to say. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so moving on to other types of microaggressions. So I've put one up here. I'm going to share a couple with you where you can see where there are other types of microaggressions that happen in the workplace. So this is something that I have actually said, and I'm going to admit it because there is no blame here. And a lot of this is not where people are intending to be offensive. Now, I said this a couple of years ago, and it was a colleague of mine that kind of said to me, are you OCD though? So, you know, this is something that we might all say. We're busy, something's happened, somebody spilt something, we're irritated by, you know, somebody's mess, and we'll say a comment like, oh, I feel so OCD today, everyone's mess is irritating me. There's also things like, you know, you're reading something off a screen and you might say something, oh, I feel a bit dyslexic today. And you don't mean offense by saying those things. However, those things can and most definitely could be taken offensively. The next one I have is, I I would kiss you, but I'm not that way inclined. And this could happen where, you know, somebody's done you a favor, they've done something for you, and you say, oh, I could just kiss you. And I've seen that where, you know, a male person may say that to another male. But what that does is that then brings up the concept of what's wrong with being that way inclined. What is wrong with having a same-sex relationship? Why would that be something that you would need to declare to everybody? And in fact, if you think about it the other way, if it was somebody from the opposite sex and you are a heterosexual, would you say to that person from the opposite sex, would you kiss that person from the opposite sex? And I would say that you wouldn't. You're in a workplace and you wouldn't kiss them anyway. So just saying I could just kiss you is enough. We don't need the rest of the sentence. And the next one I have is an interesting one and maybe a bit surprising to some people. And that is, I don't see color, I don't see disability, I don't see sexual orientation, etc., etc. Now, again, for most people, they would see this as, I'm not intending anything. What I'm actually saying, what I'm trying to say is that I see everybody. I don't see differences in people. Therefore, I treat everybody the same. But again, this is kind of a, you know, an equalities and diversity kind of a question. But we're not asking, people from diverse or marginalized groups are not asking to be seen, not to be seen for their diversity. What is being asked is that the diversity is seen, it's appreciated, it's accepted, and it's included. That's what's being asked for. So although you saying, I don't see color, if I'm telling you about my experience as a woman of color, as a Black female, you saying I don't see color, it kind of belittles my experiences, because the experiences that I could be telling you about, both those that have been, you know, bad experiences or experiences that I've been offended by, and those that are good experiences about my culture, my life, etc., they are what have made me who I am. They are what can help you to understand me. So having comments such as that, maybe frame it in a different way. You know, I accept everybody. It doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter if they have a disability. I accept, I appreciate, and I, you know, have empathy with their experience and what's happening with them. And that's kind of a different way of framing it. So I just thought that was an interesting one to put there. So let's talk. I put at the beginning of this 3 things that had been said to me in the workplace, 3 kind of microaggressive comments that had been made. So I'm going to talk about those now and kind of give a bit of explanation. So somebody said to me, oh, you're going to another funeral or another wedding, or, you know so many people. Now, for most Black people, we do have, even if it's not quite big nuclear families, as in our household, our extended families are quite big. Growing up, I always had family that were not actually related to me in my household. And a lot of, I'm from a Caribbean background. I can't speak verbatim for the Black African community, but in our community, growing up in the Caribbean, a lot of people looked after people's children as if they were their own. And they took in people as if they were their own. And so I have cousins now, aunts, uncles, who weren't actually maybe the birth children of my grandparents, great grandparents, but they've always grown up as part of our family. And, you know, for some of us in some cultures, we just have quite a lot of children. And then there's also the aspect of the majority of us are Christian or come from a Christian background. And we come from massive churches a lot of the time. In my church growing up, I had probably about 500 members. And it may sound strange, but I knew every single one of them. And we have churches now that have 2,000 members, 3,000 members. So if you think of having that kind of bond with other people, that there are going to be, your social circles and the people that you are with on a social basis, could be much larger. It's a much larger reach. It's a much larger circle. And so therefore there's more weddings, there's more funerals that we feel that are like family to us or close friends to us that we wish to attend. So I'm going to move on to the offers food to a colleague. No thanks, you guys have too much spicy food. Now, this is a kind of prevalent preconception, and I'll give you another quick example. One time I took my food out of the fridge to eat, and a colleague said to me, oh, peered over my food, first of all, which is very rude, and said to me, what's that, jerk chicken? And I've looked at them and I'm like, no, it's tuna salad. And it was this assumption that because I was eating, and I did bring in Caribbean food sometimes, that I would be eating, and it's the cliche of jerk chicken because there's nothing else that we eat. I'm not from Jamaica and jerk chicken is not one of my main dishes, but it was that assumption. The other thing is that we all like spicy food. Now, I said earlier on that I have 4 children. I have 4 girls. And only one of them can have above lemon and lime spice in Nando's. The rest of them cannot take spice at all. And so when I'm cooking, we either have the fight of, oh, just drink water, or I try to cook differently. And I would never offer spicy food to somebody else without the pre-warning of, oh, it's a bit hot, it's a bit spicy, maybe try a little bit. The third thing also takes me over to my other slide. It's just a bit of water. Stop worrying about your hair all the time. It will dry. Now, I'm going to move to my next slide to illustrate something to you. So with our natural hair, for the majority of Black people, it is not just about your hair's wet, it will dry. When our hair gets wet, you will see the first picture there. It shrinks up really tightly. So our natural curl pattern will constrict and it will be really tight to our hair. And it's quite hard to comb through, to style, to get anything where, you know, we might want to present ourselves out. And so when our hair gets wet, we cannot just leave it. It also gets dry. If it gets dry, it can break, cause all kinds of problems. So there's a process that we mostly have to go through to get our hair back to a place where it's manageable for us and where, you know, and we also have to put moisture back into it. And this process could take about 2 hours. So me going out into the rain, drying out my hair, or going into the swimming pool without pre-planning sometimes is not something that a lot or some Black women may want to do. I've also got a fun fact for you. There are some Black cultures that believe, they have a belief that going into the sea, they won't go into the sea to swim. They might go into a swimming pool, but they won't go into the sea. And that's because they believe that there are mermaids or entities in there that can kidnap them and take them back to, you know, to the sea, and they won't see their family again. And these are actual honest beliefs. They've had people that have told stories of these encounters. And so it may seem like it's something amusing, but it's something that's important to them. I'm very aware that I'm brushing over different kinds of cultural things, but what I'm trying to do is to give you a picture and an overview of the fact that there are a lot of nuances that make us who we are. And there are a lot of things and reasons why we may do what we do. And so what do you do, you know, with these things, and how can you help with this in the workplace and make sure that, you know, you're not being microaggressive towards people? And the first thing that I would say is pause. You will see from a lot of the examples that I have given here that it's mainly down to common courtesy, being respectful, and exercising a little bit of tact and common sense. And so what I would say about that is, if you just take a pause for a minute and have a think about maybe what you're about to say, how it can be construed, how it could look to somebody, whether it could cause offense to somebody, and then decide whether or not you want to say that comment or ask that question, or whether you wish to ask it or say it in a different way. The other thing that I would say that you could do is to research. Now, it's all very well asking your LGBT colleagues, your disabled colleagues, your Black colleagues about their culture, their lifestyle, you know, all of those things that you may be curious about and want to know. But there are tons of information out there. On YouTube, you can see loads of videos of hair care. I just got that as a snap from YouTube, what the slide that I showed you before. There are lots of things about where we come from, our history. I've just told you something about the Mammy water legend and how that can affect some people and they're going into the sea. There are so much things that you can look at. And you know, I, for one, would appreciate if somebody says, oh, I was reading this the other day, and I just want you to know, is that true? Do you, that is opening for conversations, for communication, and, you know, for you to have an understanding about, you know, other cultures, other ethnicities, and to avoid microaggressions. I've put this picture up here last, and it is not a nice picture. I don't like it at all. But this is what it feels like sometimes when we are experiencing this microaggressive behavior. It's as if we're on display and we're something to be studied, prodded, and looked at. Learning about other people, creating belonging and inclusion is what's required. Microaggressive behavior can lead to people not feeling that they can show up and be authentic and show up as extensively them in the workplace because of how they're going to be received and what's going to be said about them. And so my wish for everybody is to just, as I said, pause, research, reflect, and let's really have inclusion and belonging in the workplace. And I think I am just on time.
Dawn, you did amazing. I didn't want to interrupt you, but that was, you are spot on. So thank you so much. I hope everyone's found this useful. I know, you know, we've got a team, you know, we're multicultural. I've been so aware of, you know, how white I am and the fact that I don't have a lot of friends from different cultures. And how do you have those conversations and how do you respect people, but be curious as well, because I know that I'm certainly naturally curious about people's religions and ethnicity and culture, and how can you have these conversations in a respectful way. So we were so excited for your session, and thank you so much. I think, you know, go and read the comments afterwards, but a lot of people were really kind of picking up on the points that you were making. So thank you so much, Dawn, and for
Thank
everyone.
you for having me.